I don't think it's surprising that America vetoed. They vetoed before, so this is the second time since 7 October, but it's actually the 44th time in UN history that America has vetoed resolutions in order to protect Israel.
For just the fourth time in its 75-year history, the Secretary General of the UN, Antonio Guterres, summoned the Security Council using the very rarely invoked Article 99 to force them to confront the consequences for Palestinian civilians of Israel's attempt to eradicate Hamas.
I wrote to the Security Council invoking Article 99 because we are at a breaking point. There is a high risk of the total collapse of the humanitarian support system in Gaza, which would have devastating consequences. We anticipate that it would result in a complete breakdown of public order and increased pressure for mass displacement into Egypt. I fear the consequences could be devastating for the security of the entire region.
The US, a permanent member of the UN Security Council, is the sole nation to have voted against the ceasefire. Ambassador Robert Wood, who is a representative of the US, explained why America could not support this resolution.
And any ceasefire that leaves Hamas in control of Gaza would deny Palestinian civilians the chance to build something better for themselves. For that reason, although the United States strongly supports a durable peace in which both Israelis and Palestinians can live in peace and security, we do not support this resolution's call for an unsustainable ceasefire that will only plant the seeds for the next war.
Meanwhile, Britain chose to abstain. The UK ambassador to the United Nations, Dame Barbara Woodward, argued this would be a vote which does not condemn the atrocities that Hamas committed against innocent Israeli civilians on the 7th of October. Well, joining me now to analyse what happened is Sir Mark Lyall Grant, former permanent representative of the United Kingdom to the United Nations. Sir Mark, welcome to the show. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Aisha.
Many critics see the UK's abstention as a real failure to address the scale of the humanitarian crisis. Where do you stand on this?
There have been 3 resolutions voted on since the 7th of October, and the United Kingdom has abstained on all 3. And it's been quite a consistent position. And I think, given that the resolution did not condemn in any way the Hamas atrocities on the 7th of October, I think that was the reason really why Britain didn't feel that it could actually vote in favour. Had that been included, and I'm slightly surprised that the authors of the resolution didn't include it, then I think probably the United Kingdom would have voted in favour. America would still have vetoed it, of course, but the United Kingdom would probably have voted in favour.
And why do you think that line was missing? Because as you say, it feels like a very, if that was a kind of line to get someone like Britain over the line, why do you think that line was not part of the resolution, the wording?
I'm not sure. I think that there is such a feeling of overreaction by the Israelis in terms of the number of civilians that are being killed and the way they're going about this military response to the terrorist acts by Hamas, that it would be wrong to sort of put them both in a resolution as a sort of equivalence. I think that's the wrong approach, but I think it is the approach that the UAE, who actually drafted this resolution, set out. Now, when the Secretary General said that he wanted an immediate ceasefire, he made clear that he did condemn Hamas and had done that very clearly and had called for all the hostages to be released. But I think that was lacking from the resolution, and that's why Britain abstained.
Now, in terms of the US decision to veto this, I mean, it's very interesting because I spoke to a diplomat last week on my show, Mark, and he said, look, his feeling was that behind the scenes, relationships between America and Israel were probably becoming slightly strained, and that, American diplomats behind the scene would be urging a great deal of restraint to Israel, particularly as this is an issue which is now starting to kind of lap at the feet of President Biden as he faces a very difficult electoral year as well. And yet they have vetoed this. What do you think is sort of going on with the diplomacy and the relationship between America and Israel?
Well, I don't think it's surprising that America vetoed. They vetoed before, so this is the second time since 7 October, but it's actually the 44th time in UN history that America has vetoed resolutions in order to protect Israel. So there's a very strong bipartisan approach by the United States to give 100% support to Israel. And they're thinking they're in quite a difficult position because Israel is pleading with America to give them more time to achieve their military objectives. And if this resolution was adopted and there was an immediate ceasefire, that effectively means that Israel stops fighting. And because it would be a ceasefire that's unlimited and it's for humanitarian reasons, there isn't any obvious trigger for when that ceasefire would end. So essentially, it would mean the end of the military campaign at a time when Israel has not achieved really hardly any of its military objectives, because it has degraded Hamas's military structures, no doubt, but they haven't killed the 3 Hamas leaders that they want to kill who are in Gaza. And they haven't secured the release of all the hostages, and they haven't sort of destroyed Hamas as an organization. So I think Israel is saying, look, we need more time to achieve these objectives. Now, whether those objectives are actually achievable is another question. But you're right to say that America is losing patience because it's feeling the heat from the international community and is passing on that heat to the Israelis. So they have toughened up their language both privately to Israeli leaders and in public, saying, look, this cannot go on forever. There is too big a gap between what you say you're doing to protect civilians and what's actually happening on the ground. And Antony Blinken, the Secretary of State, has been saying to Israel, look, you can have a few more weeks, but that's all, basically, seems to be the line now. So there's no doubt that America is losing patience with Israel.
And final couple of questions to you. If this resolution had passed, do you think it would have made any difference on the ground? Do you think Israel would have actually, and Hamas would have abided by it?
If the resolution had been adopted, it would be legally binding on all member states. Now, it's member states because the United Nations is an intergovernmental body. So technically, it's not sort of binding on Hamas. It's binding on member states. But there isn't any enforcement mechanism. What it would mean was that if Israel did not have an immediate ceasefire, then sanctions could be imposed. There could be, other measures to try and enforce that from the international community. But it would require a second stage resolution to achieve that. But I think Israel, had it been adopted, Israel would have probably had to impose some sort of ceasefire.